So I just watched the new Billy Corgan reality show entitled Billy Corgan Adventures in Carnyland, and I went into this with a very pessimistic eye. I wanted to go in and ruthlessly hate on this thing. I infamously don't like Billy Corgan's artistic output, and I don't really like reality shows. So I thought that this was gonna be full of things for me to make fun of, full of things for me to pick apart and nitpick here on the YouTube channel, because you know I love to roll around in that kind of muck. And when this reality show, Adventures in Carnyland, dropped, I couldn't get my hands on it because it's on the CW app. I don't know what the hell the CW app is. I can't get the CW app where I live, so I had to find some shady back roads ways of watching this reality show entitled Billy Corgan's Adventures in Carnyland. And what I found when I finally got these grubby little hands on these 8 episodes was a very entertaining, wholesome time. This was so fun. This was some of the most refreshing 8 episodes of breezy, easy watching I have ever experienced. And I didn't want to like this. I wanted to hate this around every single corner. But this thing was so fun. This thing was so digestible. At 23 minutes apiece, each episode is a nice little bite-sized, refreshing appetizer that just leads into the next thing. Because today's reality shows are all like that hour-long format. You got the 90-minute thing. It's a slog just to even think about the format of reality shows these days. But this one was done right, and I kind of want to talk about it a little bit because I have a couple videos on this channel where I'm highly critical of Billy Corgan. I've made fun of the guy a couple times here on the channel, and he's kind of starting to win me over, so I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. My name is Dan Frampton. I'm a long-suffering Smashing Pumpkins hater. I've been known to not like this band for as far back as my memory can go. So much so that in high school, I made my dislike for this band part of my personality, pretty much. I would never stop talking about my least 4 favorite bands ever, whom the Smashing Pumpkins was always the tippy top of. So Billy Corgan had that going against him, in my books anyway, going into this reality show. And the other thing going against Billy Corgan is how he's been dropping the wrestling ball. Now, we're bringing wrestling into this conversation because this whole reality show is based around his love and his running of a wrestling promotion. He's Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins. It's so crazy. He's on tour. He's planning a wedding. He's got this wrestling company. How are all these things going to coexist? His band draws a lot of tickets, but his wrestling company, not so much. So already all the elements are kind of there, kind of in play to have at least an interesting premise for a reality show. Now, the reality show really does focus in on Billy Corgan, and in particular the wrestling side of his life, which I really do appreciate. But if we could just spend a little bit more time with these characters in his life, that's the only kind of critique I have to this whole presentation here. Because yeah, we got some sit downs with the wrestlers, we got some sit downs with his friends and family and that kind of thing, but a little bit more of the on-air drama could have played out through getting to know these characters a little bit more. But I said the wrestling thing was going against Billy Corgan, and I'm a wrestling fan, so how could that be? Because Billy Corgan bought the 3 most iconic letters in all of wrestling history when he bought the NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance.
When I purchased the NWA, it was essentially on its last legs. It had no cultural relevance, it had no buzz, there was no stars. It was like you're buying 3 worthless letters. And now I can bring back this old school brand that the culture in many ways has decided is no longer valuable.
Now, it's been decades since the National Wrestling Alliance had any sort of cultural relevance. And when Billy Corgan bought it, that was hope. And at first, he was kind of running this TV studio wrestling product on YouTube that was really reminiscent of that 80s wrestling stuff. And I fell in love with his show called Power. And when NWA Power was running Tuesdays at 6:05, I was there. But they ended up kinda killing the gimmick. Nick Aldis was the champ at the time. They ended up not treating him with the most respect ever. They ended up putting the title on Tyrus, and Tyrus sucks all kinds of ass. They took away that studio look that was so cool and so nostalgic and so awesome to watch, and they just started to kinda ruin a really special thing that they had going. Also, there was the Father James white powder incident that caused all this controversy when Billy Corgan thought it would be a great idea to have Father James Mitchell surrounded by a bunch of people on camera on his pay-per-view with the magical white powder just being enjoyed. And me personally, I don't care. I think we need more of that in professional wrestling. Let's get weird, let's get dark, let's start telling these crazy stories. But the larger wrestling public really fell off of Billy Corgan's approach to pro wrestling through all of these little things. Now, putting the belt on Tyrus was the kind of controversial thing that made the internet wrestling fan base kind of turn their entire backs on this project. Tyrus is a big fat oaf who can't move, okay? Sure, he worked with the WWE over a decade ago, but this guy is a pundit on Fox just spouting the nonsense from asshole to ear hole, you know what I'm talking about? The guy can't run the ropes, the guy can't take a bump, the guy is just completely immobile, and Billy Corgan put the championship on this big fat stupid oaf. And if all of that wasn't enough, there was the CW drama that would eventually turn into the show that I'm here talking about today. But when all these CW rumors started to happen about a year ago, it ended up that Billy Corgan was paying CW and not the other way around. Because that's how normally TV deals work with networks. Networks give the wrestling company the money. But in Billy Corgan's case, it seemed from all the rumor mills that Billy Corgan was paying the CW to be on their channel. And then after all of that was said and done, he didn't even get on their channel, he got buried on the app. Which after seeing the show, I think is a travesty. One of the biggest dropped balls in reality show history. Because this reality show is surprisingly good, easily digestible, and a perfect vehicle to attract new fans. This is Billy Corgan of the band Smashing Pumpkins, and you put him on a reality show that's already got the Osbournes reality show kind of vibe, that kind of interest going into it, you know? And he's got this wrestling company, and there's wrestlers all over the place, and rock stars all over the place, and he is famously a control freak, so how is he going to control all of these little things? Well, he'll show you. And that part of his personality has always been the thing that kind of irked me about him, his level of control freakiness or whatever, but seeing it play out in this way, and seeing the kind of respect that he gets from the community because of them all just jumping on board with his vision, kind of starting to see Billy Corgan in a whole new kind of light. Even though this reality show was as choreographed as a professional wrestling show, which I really do appreciate. I thought it was absolutely crushed from a format standpoint. They had a good heel role being played by Kyle Davis, who's normally just an announcer for the NWA, so to have him featured in this prominent way in the reality show was just another cool way to feature the people within this carnival that he now has around him. And because Kyle Davis's personality is so irksome, it really worked for this reality show heel type guy. And then the babyface persona that could have played out a little bit better, I think, was done with the wrestler and promoter of another company called Brian Idol.
What a disaster.
Now, Brian Idol is the man. And the heel-face dynamic that they had there was really great and could have played out in a little bit more of a dramatic way if they just spent a little bit more time on these characters. But they only had a certain amount of episodes, and I know they had to focus on the wedding and the rock and roll. But if it was all about the wrestling, that would be how I would want it to be explored a little bit. But the behind the scenes wrestling stuff that you got to see in this little documentary is such a treat to wrestling fans, because the wrestling fans are not really privy to the process. You know what I mean? So to see behind the curtain and Billy Corgan running these meetings and showing us at least a little slice of the process, and how Jazz is now a producer that helps with the process, the whole creative side of wrestling behind the scenes really has a place to shine here in the Adventures in Carny Land. But here is where I gotta talk about Billy Corgan's delusions. Now, I based this whole video's thumbnail and everything on his delusions, but his delusions are 100% supported by me. In this show, Billy Corgan makes it clear that he could take the NWA to heights greater than the WWE.
The goal is to bring the NWA back to the top level of professional wrestling, which sounds absolutely utterly crazy.
He has the biggest goals ever for this thing, and where the NWA sits right now, where they can't even sell 100 tickets to a show, it seems kind of like a pipe dream, you know? But then you remember, oh, it's Billy Corgan. He could sell out all these arenas and all these stadiums or whatever, and he's been doing that. And in this show, they show the Smashing Pumpkins on tour, and the wrestlers set up their ring in the parking lot. So they're trying to get little fans here, trying to get little fans there, but that's not going to be a net big enough to be a national, an international company, promotion like AEW, like WWE. NWA is so far away from the conversation of top promotions that it's not even funny. There's 4 or 5 promotions that you think of before you even get to the National Wrestling Alliance. TNA, New Japan, CMLL, AAA, MLW, just to name a few off the very tippy top of my head. So is Billy Corgan absolutely delusional and out of his mind for doing all this? Yeah, of course. But for some reason and somehow, he's kind of keeping a nice little balance of it all. And I think once the wrestling fans realize that the Smashing Pumpkins is part of the wrestling verse, and the wrestling stuff is a part of the Smashing Pumpkins verse, and it's all just a big part of the Billy Corgan brand that he could put under the umbrella of Carny Land, I think you could kind of appreciate the whole thing. So I've had a lot of positive things to say about this show, about this project, but there are a couple critiques as well. I already mentioned the distribution problem. The CW app is absolutely a joke for this. The storytelling and the execution in this reality show is top tier, and to have it buried on the CW app breaks my heart. There was little to no advertising for this whatsoever. You either saw it on Billy Corgan's socials, or in my case, somebody sent me the link in the DM being like, yo, this is happening now, kind of thing. But the biggest hurdle that Billy Corgan is gonna face to get the NWA to the promised land is he's gotta get over with the IWC. Now, what does that mean? The IWC stands for the Internet Wrestling Community. And right now, the IWC sees the NWA as a complete joke. It is absolutely nothing, not even a shell of its former self. And the IWC can be won over. Wrestling fans are famously fickle, and really all he's got to do is put on a really good show at the right time, with the right talent, with the right promotion behind it, but he's got to focus on the IWC first. That's where you're gonna branch out. That is the nucleus of a wrestling fandom in the year 2024, and then from that you go wider and broader than that. So Billy, I love the idea, and in order for it to be a little bit less delusional, focus on the IWC. I promise. So I support the Carny Land vision. I think it's something that is very sustainable. And now that Billy's married, that part of it doesn't need to be a part of the Carny Land experience. So now what the Carny Land experience can be rock and roll, wrestling, and reality shows. That's a beautiful umbrella for Carny Land. And in this series, I got to see the guy from the Smashing Pumpkins text the guy from the Insane Clown Posse about taking a cream pie to the face in the middle of a wrestling ring. What a sentence.
I'm in the TV truck producing the show. I get a text from Violent J. Hey, I want to take a pie in the face. Do you have any problem with that? Right back, No problem with the pie. Whatever you do, don't do it in the ring.
So in conclusion, I gotta say I've given Billy Corgan a second chance for the millionth time, and this time it's working out in his favor. I walked away from this reality show having a much better view of the NWA, having a much better view of Billy Corgan's brand and the Smashing Pumpkins as a whole than I did before sitting down for these beautiful 8 episodes. I highly recommend you get your hands on these episodes if you can, if you have the CW app, whatever the hell that means. But I'm gonna get you to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and until my next upload, watch another upload. Okay, see you later.
What a disaster.